Okay, so your job is to make sure if he starts to control me, you guys say, Mike, stop.
Let's just start with the early story, coming to the States with nothing, and just kind of take us up to the 40 billion market cap part of your life.
So I grew, as if most of you were to guess where I'm from, I think 99% of you will get you right, which is from India, right? So I grew up in India, and we were actually very poor. So when people ask me, which town are you from, what part of India are you from, I have to take a deep breath and say, well, we moved a lot. That means that we didn't have really a place where we stayed more than 6-9 months at a time. And interestingly, we didn't have to be poor. My father had a wonderful job in the government, and his job was to essentially build the buildings for the government. And India is an extremely corrupt country, at least it used to be, and it still is. And in those days, the government decided that why pay the people so much, because they're going to take the bribe anyway. So instead of making, if you're going to get $100, they pay you 10, and they say you take the money in the bribe. My dad, in his humble wisdom, decided he wants to be an honest man. And that means we have very little money to work with. And you would think that having no money would cause a lot of problems. And it turns out that was the least of our problem. Because human beings are not actually need to eat too much. If you eat too much, we all know what happens, right? We all store it here, right? So we're not supposed to eat as much as we do. And we'll come back to how to stop that someday. But so here we were. The problem that happens is the way the system works. So when you're supposed to build a building, instead of using cement, you tell the contractor, use half sand and half cement, and it's not going to last too long, but guess what? Who cares? We get the money, everybody's happy. And the money that the contractor saves by using sand instead of cement, part of it he gives it to the junior level person, which is my dad. My dad is supposed to take a small piece of it, pass it on to his boss. His boss takes his piece, pass it on to his boss. And that's how everybody in the food chain got compensated. Every 6 months, his boss will call the contractor and say, hey, I'm not seeing the money coming in. Is he taking it all? He's taking it all. You know what he's asking me to do? What? He's asking me to build the building to the spec. Have you ever heard of that? I'm losing my shirt. I bid on the building knowing I'm going to use cement. Now I'm going to use sand. I'm using cement. I'm losing my shirt. Guess what happens? In government, you never get fired. You get transferred. Every 6 months, that son of a bitch has to go. It has to go from village to village until we move to the most rural village where there is no building to be built, so he can't take someone's bribery away. So here's an engineer who cannot work because if he works, he's taking somebody's money away. So most of my studies and our siblings' study were done in a place where there were no tables, no chairs. You sat on the floor, you wrote on the floor. And my sister went on to do a postdoctorate in applied mathematics. My brother had a PhD in computer science and PhD in statistics, and now he runs a great company out of Washington, D.C., 1,700 people, clients in 150 countries, and offices in 25 countries. I am the least educated person with engineering degree from IIT and MBA. And I came to this country with $5. And God has been amazingly kind to us. And I always, every day, I look at stuff and saying, I have received so much. What can I possibly do to give back the debt to the society that I owe? And I realize if I can't pay back, I'm going to pay forward. And that's the reason you find me speaking at universities with a lot of young people. See, if I can inspire them to think differently, if I can change their life, that is be my way of paying forward to the society that I've taken so much. So I live my life just exactly what I believe in. That the people who helped me, not only I don't remember who they are, the worst part is they don't need my help. Right? So I am going to continue to pay forward, and my hope is when you become successful, you will go think the same way to pay forward to the next generation. And with that, let's get the conversation rolling.
So every time I tell someone the story about 0 to 40 billion in 4 years, they say, well, you probably have your numbers wrong. That can't be true. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you start the company? Where did the idea come from?
Yes.
I know you were an entrepreneur from a very, very early age. So I have the benefit of knowing your whole story, but maybe just that whole way of thinking about I can do something like that.
So if you go back, the things that are obvious today, so almost every successful idea in a company has the same life cycle. When you start something that is going to be really big, people call you crazy. And so the way I know is the day before any breakthrough is considered a crazy idea, right? So anytime you come back, if somebody asks you what you're doing and they don't call you crazy, you're not thinking big enough. Go back and think bigger. So every time you tell someone what is it that you're going to be doing in your life, unless they say, that's goddamn crazy, think big, right? Unless you happen to be crazy, in that case, all bets are off, right? right? But, so think now, go back about 20 years ago, when there were, before iPhones, before any smartphones, I started a company called InfoSpace. And my thesis was, one day, people are going to have the cell phones that, in those days, the best sold cell phones from Motorola, Star Trek, the flip phones. There is no screen, nothing. I said there has to be that people would have their stock quotes, news, email, everything has to be on this cell phone. Why would people have to have multiple devices? Everybody told me, you're crazy. We have Palm Pilots. They're great. Most people are thinking, what's Palm Pilot, right? Right. People who know Palm Pilot, there were the devices people used to get their email, contact, calendar. There were just separate devices. And people used to carry around something called pagers, right? Those tiny devices. That's how the text messages were done, right? And I said, one day, all these services needs to be on this cell phone. So I started a company to build the services for cell phone, and I went out and did the contract with every carrier around the world to build their private internet services on these cell phones using SMS text messages and using something called web browser, wireless access protocol. And that's why my first company. And our thinking was, it is going to happen. We were way ahead of the time. And most of the time, when you're so far ahead of your time, someone else benefits from your ideas. Not in this case, not with this immigrant in line. I went and told people that, hey, you never want to bet against an immigrant. What if I am right that it does happen? And there are 6 billion phones out there that are going to use my service. What if I'm right? And you miss out on that opportunity. So one thing good about Wall Street is they love greed and they have fear. And I captured both of them. What if you missed? What if you missed the opportunity? And what if I'm right? And they were fearful of missing the opportunity and the greed just took over.
Okay, that was very good. Okay, we're just getting started here, by the way. I know this guy. We are just getting started, really. Okay, so that was your first company.
Yeah.
So now I know you have 4 companies.
Sure.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about each one.
Sure.
And then, okay.
Then I'm going to talk about the next 4 companies, which is more exciting. So the companies that I have not started. So I'm going to tell you what are the companies that I'm going to start in the next 6 to 12 months. And I suggest each one of you go out there, try to compete with me. Because if any one of you go out there can execute better than I can execute, you deserve to win. Right? And my hat's off to you. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to be doing it, and I want each one of you to say, you know what? I think I can do better than that old guy. Go do it. Right. So let me tell you the companies that I'm doing right now. So I have a company which is called Moon Express, and we are going to go mine the moon. Now you say, that's crazy. That's good. Right. The next question people say, but who owns the right? Good question. No one. It's like wild, wild west out there. There's 16 quadrillions dollar worth of minerals on the moon that nobody owns. That means I own them just as much as you do. That means if I happen to go there and go do that. So here is why I am doing it. It is obviously a really, really good business. But that's not the only reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I think it is so inspirational. A poor boy growing up in a poor country, looking up at the moon, looking at that moon and saying, the richest person in the world looks at the thing the same way that I am looking at it. He has no more advantage than I do. And today with that, if I can dream and land on the moon and make a history that says no other company ever in the history of humanity has ever landed on the moon. Only 3 most powerful countries ever landed. If you become the first ever private company to ever land on the moon, not only you make history, You inspire the next generation to think so big that nothing they would find impossible. Right? So to me, it is so inspirational that if I can show people that I can go do this, there is nothing that stops you from doing what you want to do. So to me, going to the moon is a 4-minute-a-mile problem. If you remember way back when, people thought the human body cannot run a mile under 4 minutes, and no one did, until one person did that. Within 3 years, 16 more people did that. Right? So that is, to me, people say, so what happens if you go to the moon? What next? To me, landing on the moon is that singularity event. It will change the way people think. It will change the way the new applications are going to be coming out based on that, because that now you have created a platform that people thought wasn't possible. The same way Steve Jobs did. When he started the iPhone, his brilliant idea was not the iPhone. His brilliant idea was open it up and distribute the applications that people are going to build for this iPhone. And if you were to go and ask people at that time, you're going to have this phone, what application would you build for this phone? Not a single person would have said, I would love to throw the birds at the pigs. But guess what? That's all they did. Number 1, number 2, number 3 app. They were throwing the birds at the pigs. But nobody would have guessed that, right? So my point is, when we land on the moon, what application people will use? Throwing the birds at the pigs. We don't know yet.
Okay, that's one company.
Right. So essentially, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the company, because my job is really, to be in all honesty, is I can tell you all about the things. So you can go read yourself. You're pretty smart people. Go to the web. There's a company called TalentWise, which is a B2B company disrupting the whole hiring process management. There is a company called Intellius, and there's a company called iKnow. So instead of my wasting time on you in this describing what the company does, let me just tell you the way about thinking about how do you start a company. So to me, as an entrepreneur, the biggest challenge you face is defining the problem you're trying to solve. Right? If you define the problem incorrectly, by definition, the solution you're going to come up with is going to solve an incorrect problem. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. So if you were to come to the conclusion that our education system is broken, what is the answer? You're trying to go and say, how do I fix the education system? What if the problem definition happens to be not that? What if somebody were to say, our education system is not broken, but it is obsolete? Suddenly, the solution you're looking at are very different. And actually, our education system is not broken a bit. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's like an old Nokia phone that your grandpa uses. You can tell your grandpa that your phone is broken. He's going to say, no, it's not broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. If I press the button, it dials. Obviously, you can throw birds at the pigs, but that's not what it's designed for. So what's happening is our needs have changed. When the education system was designed, you could learn the certain skills, and those skills could be applied for the rest of your life, and you can become a productive citizen of the society. With the exponential technologies, what's happening is every skill that you learn is becoming obsolete every 5 to 10 years. When your skill is becoming obsolete every 5 to 10 years, you have to change the way you are taught. You no longer want to teach people the skills. You want to give them the tools how to learn. So learning to learn, learning to solve problems, learning to work together. So there are different way of doing things is because our needs have changed. And if you're interested in that particular topic, if you go to Forbes.com, just look at why education system is ripe for disruption. I've written an article on that. And the second part of that is how to disrupt, how to create an education system for the next century. So go to Forbes.com, type my name, and you'll find a whole bunch of things. So I'm not going to repeat that. Another great example of that thing that actually you would really enjoy. I felt that there was, the biggest problem that everybody talks about is a fresh water problem around the globe. So I thought, oh my God, it is a problem that I can go solve. So I started looking at a fresh water problem. And I came up, found a bunch of amazing technologies that can go out and take the dirty water and create, desalinize the water. Every type of ways we can create more fresh water. As I started to look at that, I say, I'm solving the wrong problem. That's a symptom of the problem. It turns out 70% of all fresh water is used for agriculture. And I'm thinking, oh, wow. So I don't need to worry about the fresh water. All I have to do is solve the agriculture problem. So I start thinking about aquaponics solution, the hydroponic solution, the aeroponic solution, just somehow find a way to use less fresh water. And I knew I could reduce the use of fresh water substantially just by simply coming up with the new agriculture techniques. As I started digging into it, it occurred to me 50% of all agriculture is used for cattle. And I'm thinking, wow, all I have to solve now is a cattle problem. Right? Is somehow if I can create the beef without having to have a cattle, I solve the agriculture problem that in turn solves the freshwater problem. So guess what happened? You solve the cattle problem by simply taking a stem cell and just like the nature does, converts a stem cell into a muscle tissue. And that's a beef. You don't have to have a cattle to have a beef, which is nature does that. So why not just use the biofactories to create the beef? And if you were to do so, suddenly it solves a freshwater problem. The reason I'm saying is the freshwater problem became a synthetic biology problem, right? And that to me is an entrepreneurial way of thinking, is that I was attacking the symptom rather than understanding where the problem is. And to me, that's what you need to be thinking every time you go out as an entrepreneur and you say, I'm going to solve this. Think about, are you really solving the symptom or are you really solving the root cause? Because if not, what ends up happening, you'll get disrupted because somebody will go upstream and actually make your thing completely obsolete.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Okay, so really, this is defining a way to think, very much along the lines of Professor Cox's thinking. Maybe I'll just ask you to kind of tag along that story with one I've read about you. And it was a story about your daughter. Mm-hmm. And all the Jains are not only upstream, but downstream, equally as talented. I don't know how many of you were here last year that saw his son.
How many people were last year?
Ankur. Was he amazing or what? Yeah,
That's my son.
That was his son. So, and he also has other children too. This is a story about his daughter. And what I read, and maybe I'm a little incorrect about this, is that at one point she decided that science and math were not interesting to her, and she wanted to go a different direction. And me, in terms of my parenting and everything, I've always learned is just support your children and go with your passion and do what you want. Honey, I support you 100%. That wasn't the approach you took, if I recall. Is that correct?
That's right. So there is an article, if you go to Inc.com, that I wrote called "A Entrepreneur versus His Eye-Rolling Teenage Daughter." And this is actually, I'm going to go ahead and repeat that story because I really think personally it defines how you think as an entrepreneur. So my daughter at 17 came to me and said, Dad, I know you love science and technology. I want nothing to do with it. I have found my passion and I want to pursue my passion. So just get used to it. Now, most parents would be glad that your children have found their passion. And your first answer would have been, sweetheart, whatever your passion is, I want you to pursue it. I'll find the world's best and help you pursue your passion. That, as a parent, to me, is no different than saying, I really don't give a shit, do whatever you want. Right. 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 But fact is, so here's how the conversation went. And I call her my dolly. I said, doll, you're not letting Dad do his job. What's Dad's job? Dad's job is really simple, not allowing you to have a passion until I have exposed you to things that I think you should be exposed to. Really? So what is it that you have in mind for me then? And I said, I'm glad you asked. What I would like you to do would be to go to Singularity University, and I want you to learn about neuroscience, I want you to learn about genetics, I want you to learn about robotics, I want you to learn about nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. She rolled her eyes and said, Dad, you didn't hear a word I just said. I have no interest in science and technology. And I said, I heard you, sweetheart, loud and clear. What you didn't ask me is, what is the solution? She said, oh, so you have a solution now for me. And I said, sure do. So I said, here's how we're going to do it, sweetheart. If you make me one promise that you're going to go there for 4 weeks with an open mind, wanting to like and wanting to learn. And if you've done that, you come back after 4 weeks, you get to decide what you want. I have done my part of exposing you to everything you should be exposed to. And whatever you end up deciding, I will support you. He said, Dad, if you promise me that, I will go there. And she did. As soon as she came in, she opens the door and the first words were, Dad, I've made up my mind. And my first word were, oh shit. I said, Dad, doll, I gave you my word, so tell me what would you like to do? She said, Dad, I've decided either I'm going to be go do neuroscience or genetics. Took a deep breath and I said, doll, at the risk of you changing your mind, would you tell me what actually happened here? What made you change your mind? She said, Dad, you're so dumb. You don't understand. I am in high school. I go do my science class. I mix the chemicals. It changes the color. I go do the physics. I do the algebra. I say, why do I really care? It's nothing I want to do in my life. This thing matters. When I went to Singularity University, I care a lot about the girls' education. I realized I can't understand the girls' education unless I know how the human brain works. And I know the education it ties to girls' health care. And if I don't know about genetics, how am I going to fix the health care? So what I realize is the science and technology is not the destination. It is simply the tools for me to do what I care to do, which is girls' education and what's girls' health. And I realize I can't do that unless I have all the tools at my disposal. And that's why I want to do it. Now imagine that 17-year-old girl came to the conclusion that we adults don't come to that conclusion. We think science and technology is the destination. It is simply the tools to allow you to do what you want, whether it is fresh water, whether it's girls' education, whether it is doing anything else that you care about, whether it's food or poverty or homeless shelter, you pick you one.
Naveen, so I'm a professor.
Yes.
And I teach the strategy class, which is the last class the students take before they graduate. And oftentimes I give these assignments, and on purpose I don't give a lot of direction. And I think oftentimes, and a lot of students have trouble with these assignments because there isn't rules, there isn't boxes to check, there isn't how many points do I get for this, how many points do I get for this, and I often think that we do a bit of a disservice to the entrepreneur with our education system by the way we define everything. You check these boxes, you get these points, you get this grade, and that's what you need to go to the next step. The way you talk about being an entrepreneur, it's almost like you have no rules. What advice would you give to all of us in the audience, not just the students, but professors, everyone in the audience? What advice would you give us to be able to go through that stream of consciousness that you described earlier, to be able to jump 3 steps ahead? Is there certain things we can do to train our mind or to untrain our mind from all of the compartmentalization that we've been taught through school?
Yes, you can. And the way you do that actually is really simple. I think the human mind, our first reaction, anytime there is a problem, the first thing comes to your mind is, who is an expert at it? But the fact is, expert is very good at coming up, at best, an incremental evolution, incrementally a better solution that exists. If you want something totally disruptive, you go to somebody who's totally non-expert, right? So it's not about thinking outside the box. It is about thinking in a different box altogether. So anytime you want to start a company and you ask yourself, I know nothing about this industry. My answer is, God damn it, you are the best person to go disrupt that industry. Because the only way you can disrupt something is when you know nothing about it. Because you take the knowledge and skills from one thing you know and apply that to completely different industry. So when I started Moon Express, which is my space exploration, my first reaction was, how would you go to the moon? It keeps moving. Then somebody explained me there is an orbit and there is really a technical way of getting there. I said, I got it now. Right? But I was able to apply the knowledge of software to the space exploration because I knew software. And they wanted to build one big rocket that can go to the moon and come back. And I said, it seems to me a module. What about the modules? There is one rocket that goes from the Earth's surface to Earth orbit, and a lot of people are doing it like Elon Musk. Why do I have to build it? Can I just have something very small that goes from Earth orbit to moon orbit, and a small rocket that goes from moon surface to moon orbit? And they're really 3 different modules. So why do we have to build anything like that? We all have to build a small rocket and everything else is done. And my point was I was able to apply the fundamental principles of software to the industry I knew nothing about. And I plan to, my next 4 companies I'm doing is in the healthcare. And you know why? Because I know nothing about healthcare. Right? Because that allows me to really think about the problem so differently than anybody in the medicine field. Every time I tell someone, so here's what I came to the conclusion. Most diseases that we see today are not the diseases are genetics or actually of any other reason other than simply the imbalance of the microbacteria in your gut. So 90% of the diseases, in fact, in the last 1 month, they found, including the neurological disease like Parkinson's disease, do not happen in your brain. It happens in your gut, and it gets transmitted to the brain. In fact, I saw just yesterday the research that says the imbalance of the microbacteria is what causes the cardiac arrest, and also high blood pressure and the high cholesterol and the plaques in the arteries. It's all because of the bacteria. Now imagine what's happening. 90% of the cells in your body are bacterial cells. Only 10% is your own genome. 90% is foreign. So when you really get proud of who you are, you're simply a host for bacteria. Right? Right? But what happens is, when you start taking a lot of antibiotics, that antibiotics kills the whole colonies of bacteria. And that is what causes the imbalance of microbiome. Right? So my thinking is somehow find a way to reduce the use of antibiotics. So I looked at a lot of the space research that has been done. So NASA spent tens of billions of dollars trying to find a life on Mars. You know what life on Mars is? They're looking for bacteria on the soil. I'm thinking if they can find a bacteria on the soil, they could definitely find it in my saliva. So what if you're sick and you spit on it and use this technology to detect bacteria? Guess what? If you have no bacterial infection, no point taking antibiotics. We take antibiotics when we have viral infection, and that's what causes a lot of the grief, right? So point is, you're able to do things because apply something that is designed for something else, and you apply that to something totally different. They designed something called electronic nose for a space station to find if there is an infection in the air because people are going to die. Guess what? We can take that electronic nose and put them in the hospital to detect if there is any MRSA infection or staph infection in the air. Right? So, yes, so there you are. So you can go build those companies right now. Right? So point is, there's so much you can do by taking the things from one industry and applying them to totally different industry. So all you have to do is start thinking about, not do I have a novel idea. The reason you don't start a company, everyone will tell you, oh, because I'm waiting for a good idea. I don't have a good idea. Idea is a dime a dozen. You can ask a cab driver and he'll give you 10 ideas, right? So ideas are not the problem. When you say someone that I'm waiting for an idea, what you're telling them is, I'm not ready to start a company yet. Because the day you're ready to start a company, you can go to Google and you can type anything that you want to do and you can see what other companies are doing. And you can say, moron, I can do better. Right? So point is, you don't have to be the first. You just have to out-execute them. When I started my company in Talius, there were 150 companies doing the same thing. And I looked at the stuff and said, bunch of morons. I can out-execute them all. And I did. You know what I did? I sucked the oxygen dry out of them. I did not let them breathe. I cut their traffic out. I did exclusive deals where they could not get the damn traffic. Even if I lost money, I wanted to cut their oxygen. By doing that, guess what? All of them went out of business and I bought them all. Right. So point was...
We're starting to move away from the SEER theme.
No, but point is, it is not.
We're in the more realistic part of the program now.
Entrepreneurship is not about, it's about creating a solution that people want, right? So a business cannot be sustainable if it's not profitable. Every business does something good. A business cannot be sustainable in a long term unless it's providing the services that people want. So by definition, everybody is solving somebody's pain and you're doing good in the world. So doing good and doing well are not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, I would argue the only way to make a lot of money is to solve a big problem. So if you want to make $1 billion, it is trivial. To make $1 billion, all you have to do is solve a $10 billion problem. That's it. And you know which are the $10 billion problems? Every single social problem you talk about is a massive opportunity for an entrepreneur to make money. The only thing you have to do is never ever call yourself a social entrepreneur. Social entrepreneur to me means that it's a consolation prize. Well, I couldn't really be an entrepreneur, so I'm going to do something social entrepreneur, right? Be a damn entrepreneur. Who is going to argue with you if you can provide a fresh water to billion people around the world and you make $1 billion profit? Nobody's going to say, how dare you provide clean water to everyone? They're going to say, my hat's off to you, I wish you made more money, right? So point is, do good. I mean, every big problem, education is a $1 trillion problem. Healthcare is a multi-trillion dollar problem. Fresh water, food, homeless shelter. People say, how do you make money in a homeless shelter? Let me tell you about how to think about a business, which is so primitive that you would say there's no way an entrepreneur can go make money on it. So this is a true story. About 2 years ago, there is a woman who came to me, and all she wanted was me to write a check to her. She said, you know, sir, we have been doing a homeless shelter in the neighborhood, and we have done such a great job. Now we need to expand, and we're having a capital campaign. You know, capital campaign, people who are rich know what that means. That means write me a check, we're going to make the building bigger. So I asked her, I said, if you were an entrepreneur, I was a venture capitalist, how would this conversation go? If you succeed in asking me that what you're going to do, you're going to come back and ask me for more money. And if you fail, I lost my money. Either way, there is no upside for me here. She said, that's how these things are done. And I said, not necessarily. Think about it as an entrepreneur. You have to always ask yourself 2 questions. What is my product that I'm selling, and who is my customer? She, at this point, is getting frustrated with me because all she wants is a check. So I said, what is your product, and who's your customer? She said, sir, it's really easy. My product is my shelter, and my customers are these women who need this shelter. And I said, young lady, you have a real problem. What is my problem? Your customers don't pay you. She said, well, that's how we are in the nonprofit business. That's why you have to write a check for it. I said, no. What if you change the model and say, women are my product and local businesses are my customer? Guess what happens? Now these women can be not only learn the skills, local businesses want temporary help, and you tell the local businesses you can pay them minimum wage, and I guarantee you they will show up on time, because if they don't show up on time, they won't have a roof on their head tonight. They are very motivated to work hard. So you now have the more women come to your shelter, more help you're providing businesses, more money you're making for these women, and they will eventually move out because now they're self-sustainable, right? So by simply changing the model about who the product is, who the customer is, you're able to take some basic things like a homeless shelter and convert them into an entrepreneurial business model. It's all about changing the way you think.
Ooh, now you know how excited I was. Yeah. Now you know how excited I was about having Naveen here. The whole lineup has been pretty impressive. Larry, do you think we should go to questions? And how much time do we have?
Well, you know, we're running a little bit over right now, so maybe just a few questions.
Okay.
A couple questions.
A few questions.
Yep.
Nikolai.
Hello. Thanks for amazing presentation and amazing talk. Every time I get up in the morning, I think, how can I outsmart my competitors? And one of them happened to be TalentWise, which you founded. My question is, every time you found a company or found a business,
yeah,
you need a strong team of partners, strong team of people. Mm-hmm. And how you select those people, based on what criteria, or what specific qualities you focus on, mm-hmm. what talents you're looking for? Thank you.
So, you know, when you're looking for a friend, you want someone who is just like you. When you're looking for co-founders, you want someone you can barely stand, right? Because you want complementary skill sets, right? So if you are a strategy guy, vision guy, you don't want another strategy vision guy saying, go, 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 you're doing good. You want someone who's operational guys, look, I don't understand the shit you're talking about, but I can go make sure it gets done. Right? So point is, you're looking for a very complementary skills. In terms of finding things, what I find is you want people who have passion for life, people who have passion to win. They don't care about what ideas, they have the passion to win. People who have that passion to win and passion for life, they never fail. Entrepreneurs never fail. They pivot, right? And the only time you fail in life is the day you give up. If you don't give up, you never fail, right? So to me, the only reason people give up is people stop believing in themselves, right? So if you believe in yourselves, there is nothing. There is more money out there than you can possibly ever count. There is more money being thrown at you for great ideas. So if you are that person that has that much passion that people know you will never lose, people will give you as much money as you need. I remember, half the time people don't even understand what I'm saying, but people believe, say, that guy seems like to be really passionate about it. I don't even know what he's doing, but I think we want to be part of that.
Got time for one more question.
Hi, I have a little quick two-part question.
Yeah.
So I want to be quick about it. I actually founded a nonprofit organization that connects excess food to those agencies that are feeding people that are hungry. Started it a few years ago and digressed back to realize that it was how do you inspire kids to get excited about future of technology as we learned that technology was changing, and you fast forward to how do you get them excited? You can't if they're hungry. So I took 3 steps back to realize that that was really the start of the problem. And going to a different box, what are the ways that you can get food and get it to places that are doing more than the Band-Aid of feeding people, but using the funding in order to use programs to get people back up on their feet? When you are recommending in these type of models for people to do this, like the one with the homeless shelter, in a nonprofit status, how much does the pivot on that then turn to a for-profit, and how does both the funding and the philanthropic communities view that then in terms of being a viable return on investment?
Sure. So first of all, you make it look like for-profit as is something evil, right? Right. So for-profit is not evil thing to do. For-profit is a sustainable thing to do, right? So so the way you do that is you can have a for-profit arm, and then you have a non-profit, essentially called sunk money. That means you do it because it makes you feel good. So what happens is people do bad things and they make money, and to make them feel good, they give money away. To me, philanthropy is not about giving money. If you are really philanthropic, you go solve problem. So philanthropy, anybody who thinks philanthropy is about giving money, they're wrong. Philanthropy is about solving a problem, right? So go find a problem that you care about and solve it. That's a philanthropy. And if anybody who's interested, there's an article I written on that subject on Forbes called Entrepreneur's Perspective on Philanthropy, right? So you will find that in some sense, the guy who are supporting it, ask them for their time, not for their money. Because the reason the successful people are successful is because they are able to figure out how to solve the biggest problems. And when they solve biggest problems, they make the biggest money, right? So to me, is to get people who are really successful about how would you go about making it self-sustainable without taking their money. So for example, it doesn't matter how poor you are, you always need some basic goods. What if you are able to, while you're delivering food, also bring those things that they need that they can buy, and you keep the margin just like a retail store would. So instead of them going to a retail store, letting the retail store make margin, they have a relationship with you. You deliver them the food, and they will still have some needs to buy the basic thing, whether it's a toilet paper or something, and you bring them and sell them just like a retail store, and you keep that margin and make yourself self-sustainable using that. Right? Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Gentleman has a question. If you want, I can answer it, or you can.
Namaste, Om Shanti. Coming from you being in India,
Yeah.
we've seen how yoga and meditation, the pre-Vedas the yoga has been affecting the West, helping the corporate world with stress management, better productivity, retention.
Yes.
Where do you see your yoga being future in America and the corporate industry?
So first of all, it's based on the neuroscience research, and there is a guy named Richard Davidson. You can read his book. They've done tremendous amount of neuroscience work that when you essentially what we call meditation, when you do that, it fundamentally rearranges and reorganizes your neural connections, right? So we can talk a lot more about that, but that's actually is not a voodoo science. That's actually neuroscience. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Naveen Jain.
Thank you.
So the medallions we've been giving out have a picture of our founder. The name Graziadio, George Graziadio, on the front, and talks about being SEER certified. And I'm just going to read the back. This is the ancient order of SEER, advanced strategy. We call this advanced strategy because of the way you have to implement much of what you talked about. Autotelic, just the word is auto, self, telic, telos, goals. Being autotelic. So someone who is autotelic and intrinsically motivated doesn't care about what extrinsic motivation, what society thinks, what their parents think, what's important to them, they value it. So it says, to all seekers of autotelic activity, know ye that Naveen, Jain, November 7th, 2014, was deemed worthy and is now in the flow. And as such, as expected, this certified thought leader will change the world with his values, leadership, and is now duly gathered into our fold as an advanced strategist.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.